place.
Who'd have thunk it? Can you put on one?
How's everybody doing?
Hey, Scott.
The meeting hasn't really started yet.
Hello, Nancy.
Hey, Tara.
Terry.
How's it going? Is everybody okay?
How's your foot? How's your mom?
Good. She's real good.
Excellent.
I was shocked she didn't volunteer to do something because you nurses, boy, it's hard to keep you down. But yeah, no.
Okay, we're live, guys, right now, just as we set up to start the meeting. We'll start here in about another minute or so.
So we have Rick, Terry, me. Is there anybody else on that I don't see from?
Yeah, we
Joanne's
have
the only one missing.
Who is?
I'm here.
Mike's here.
Mike's here.
I'm here.
I
This
just
is
don't
Dan.
see you.
Yeah,
Oh, Pete, living
here.
large, living large.
yeah, Joanna's missing.
Just me. Yeah, just Joanna's the only one right now. She could be stuck in traffic
So,
on the internet highway.
Pete, what is that background that you have? Is that a Zoom background?
I would love to tell you that it's my house, but it's not. It's a Zoom background.
That's Chicago? Is that a penthouse in Chicago?
I'm not sure where it's from, to be honest with you.
It is.
Looks like
It is. I'll tell you, it's beautiful.
It is that time.
It's that time. I was just going to say, okay, let's call to order on the roll call, please, Mrs. Neidick.
Okay. Nancy Kupka,
Present.
Mike Davenport,
Here.
Sherelle Fuller,
Here.
Dan Nicholas,
Here.
Carrie Pavasich,
Here.
Rick Pavanato,
Here.
Haley Grubich,
Here.
Ariel Johnson.
Here.
We have a quorum. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
with liberty and justice
for all.
for all.
Thank you all. Okay, we're going to start out with an approval of the minutes. The Board of Education will approve the minutes of the April 20th, 2020 business meeting, the May 4th, 2020 workshop meeting, the May 4th closed meeting, and the May 14th, 2020 Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee meeting. The board members have had the minutes prior to this meeting for examination. The minutes will be made public within 10 days of board approval.
So moved.
Terry?
Hmm?
Who
Second.
seconded?
Nancy, this is
Carry
Dan. Can we pull out the meetings for the parent advisory? Because I don't think most of us went to that, and vote on that separately.
Certainly.
Oh, yeah.
Also, guys, I find if we're all on mute, if you're not speaking, it helps eliminate the echo.
I'm sorry, what did you just say, Sherelle? It was echoing and I couldn't understand you.
I said I find if we're all on mute, if you're not speaking, it would eliminate the echo.
Okay, good point. Housekeeping, everybody mute if you're not speaking. So again, we're going to ask for a motion to approve the April 20th, 2020 business meeting minutes, the May 4th workshop meeting minutes, the May 4th closed meeting minutes. The board's had the minutes for 10 days. I'm sorry, these minutes will be made public until such time as the board approves them. I'm so sorry. I'm reading the wrong thing. The Board of Education will approve the meetings as stated. The board members have had the minutes prior to this meeting for examination. The minutes will be made public within 10 days of board approval, with the exception of the closed meeting, in which case these minutes will not be made public until such time as the board approves release. Do we have a motion? Terry, just raise your hand. Do you motion again? Terry motions. Mike, are you seconding?
Second.
Okay.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller,
Aye.
Dan Nicholas,
Aye.
Rick Pavanato,
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye. The minutes are approved. Now let's talk about the May 14th, 2020 Parent Teacher Advisory Committee. Dan, did you want to?
I wasn't part of that. I just wanted to take that out of the vote for the minutes because I couldn't vote for it because I wasn't there.
Yeah, but only two of us were present.
Right. So I don't think we have to approve those minutes.
I was curious why they were in our group of things to approve as well, but I mean, I think the board still has the authority to approve the minutes.
Yes, we do. And we have to. So if you don't want to, you can abstain. That's fine. But we've had an opportunity to read them, and the question is if we will approve them. And we have had representatives who also read them. Would anybody who attended like to comment on the veracity of the minutes?
They were accurate, a good summary.
So do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 14th, 2020 Parent Teacher Advisory Committee meeting? We've had the minutes prior to this meeting for examination, and they'll be made public within 10 days of board approval.
So moved.
Mike? Hey, who wants a second?
I'll second.
Terry?
Yeah.
Thank you. Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Rick Pavanato,
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller,
Aye.
Dan Nicholas,
I'll abstain. I wasn't at the meeting.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye, the minutes are passed. Okay, we're going to move on to the reception of visitors and public comment.
We've received no visitor comments.
Okay. Hearing none, we are going to move on to the recommendations and reports of the superintendent. And I understand, Dr. Thiele, you're going to start with a special report.
I want to take a moment here at the beginning of this board meeting to recognize Ariel and Haley for serving as students on the board for the past year. They are now officially done with school, so congratulations.
Hey.
Yay.
God, thank you.
I'd like each of them to I'm going to put them on the spot here and tell us something that they learned being a student board member this year, and then what's next for them moving forward. So Ariel, we'll start with you.
All right. So what I've learned from being on the Board of Education is that there is a lot that goes on within our school that a lot of people don't think about. And I feel like I was able to help at least some of my friends understand like the reasons behind things. For like, if they didn't understand something, I would let them know, like if they have a problem, they can talk to me and I'll try to like bring it up if they have an issue, which they didn't, or like I would invite them to the board meetings. So I feel like that was something I learned. And what's next for me is that I'm going to Eastern Illinois. My major is going to be kinesiology, and I'm also going to be running track there.
Yay. Eastern.
Nice job on Eastern. That's where I went.
Me
Thank
too.
And look what happened there, Ariel. No.
I was going to do that. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you, Ariel. We wish you the best of luck. We are sending you a little token of appreciation that will show up in the mail in a little bit in a few weeks here. So, and then Haley, how about you? Something you learned and what's next for you?
Something I've learned from being on both the board and the school newspaper is really how to communicate what we talk about in board meetings and like all the information to the student body. I wrote a lot about these board meetings throughout the year, and I found it really interesting to like get the students informed with the issues. So I really learned that. And next year I'm going to University of Illinois. I'm studying civil environmental engineering. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you so much, Haley. Good luck.
All right, thank you.
U of I. Let's go.
And you know, our meetings are always public, so you know, when you're back in town, you have nothing else to do, you can always come by and visit us.
I will.
So,
Congratulations.
we actually
Thank you.
typically at this board meeting, we also then introduce our next set of student board members, but with everything that's been going on, we're going to pause on that and then do that in the fall. So that'll be coming in September at some point. So thank you, Ariel and Haley. And like I said, we wish you the best of luck. And thank you for all the time you've spent with us this year. It's great to have the student perspective at a board meeting.
Absolutely.
Let us know how you do. We're really rooting for both of you. You're both going to do so well in life. It's so easy to see.
And if you ever need letters of recommendations from adults, there's a lot of them here.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't consider myself an adult, but the rest of them.
I was just going to say, and then there's Mike, but still my son. Okay. Parent feedback from the Parent Teacher Advisory Committee, and I guess Scott's going to.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Scott, and then we had a few board members present as well. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, so we met last Thursday evening. We had 17 participants, and I think about 8 parents were on a Zoom call with us, and Mike and Joanna joined us as well. And we reviewed our behavior for special education. We reviewed and revised our behavior intervention procedures. And then we moved into Gina's consolidated district plan. She went through the needs assessment and presented that to the group and offered feedback. And then after the meeting, we did send out a Google form to get some additional feedback if there was any. I know I usually leave a meeting and think of about 10 things. So we're just waiting on feedback from that, and I'll share that when we get it. But it was a good night.
Any board members that attended want to weigh in on this at all, or Gina?
I don't have anything to add. It was just as reported. And I think it was just Joanna and I that were there. So.
Yeah, I had, I wasn't sure if it was the appropriate place to ask questions. I just was sort of interested because of all this COVID and are we or are we not going back to school, how they would implement doing some of these things, like testing and doing a BIP, or a functional assessment. I had questions like that. I just wasn't sure if that was the proper venue to bring it up at.
Yeah, I mean, that's, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I was just going to say that obviously with a behavior plan, it's usually based on, the environment that you're in. And it's obviously geared towards school environments. So those are going to be, obviously we'll be figuring those out as we go in terms of how to support students and families. And we have resources that we do engage families with to help offer some guidance. The actual procedures is really like a legal requirement of the IDEA and IEP world that is given to parents on an initial evaluation or when they enter the district. So we were just kind of updating, just to give everyone an example, like we had a board policy that was changed. So we needed to update that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought it was. So I didn't.
Yeah, there wasn't. Yeah, and that one there wasn't a lot. And I know that the questions centered around like some of Gina's questions about testing and all that. And that's obviously we're working through that, right, to figure out.
Yeah, because that's going to be pretty complicated. How are you going to test and keep it safe and sanitized and
absolutely.
Well, Gina, maybe you want to share a little bit about. I mean, because I'd asked during the meeting and we discussed and what are we going to do in the future. Because we've relied on some of the standardized tests and a lot of these data points to kind of help direct us, in the right direction and how best to respond. And we're not going to have some of those data points this year. So that was
right.
That was the only question I had during the meeting, and you did a nice job addressing that. So
there's no doubt we're going to have to look at different data sets or find ways to get appropriate data. And one of the things we also talked a little bit about at the meeting is that there are going to be gaps. And we're going to need to put in place interventions that will help students to master the content they need to eliminate the gaps. And it's going to be very targeted. And I'll talk about that a little bit when I talk about the consolidated district plan. but certainly we are going to have to look at different data and think about how we support students differently.
Yeah.
And once the school year ends, then we're going to start looking at really 3 different pathways: a return to school, because there's got to be a transition period coming back, you know, from remote learning back to face-to-face instruction. We'll look at enhancing our online remote learning experience. It's likely that at some point next year, if not to start the school year, at some point during the year, there'll be a flare up in COVID and we'll have to return to remote learning for a period of time. Or if there's cases in the school, we might have to close down for a couple of days to just do a more thorough cleaning. There's all kinds of scenarios where we might come back, we might be remote, or we might be in some combination of a blended version where you have some students returning and some students working virtually. So we're beginning to put together plans and protocols and ideas for that. We're also collaborating with DuPage County. I'm helping to lead the group of high school districts across DuPage on what the hybrid model might look like. And then we're waiting still for ISB guidance on those 3 models as well. So I'd imagine over the next month, we're going to be trying to figure those things out, and all the details inside of those. You know, it's like figuring out school all over again.
You got a big job there.
Yeah. So, but that'll really be our focus once we wrap up the school year this week. All right. Any other things on the parent-teacher advisory committee meeting? Scott, you usually write up a report of any other comments you get, and we just follow up
read the
in
feedback.
Friday notes. Yep. So, all right.
Discipline code revision.
Yep. I'll turn this one over to Scott as well. Discipline code revisions and changes to the parent handbook, athletic activities handbook. A reminder, all of the handbooks are an extension of the discipline code, which is why we bring these to the board every year, because by going through the board approval process, the student handbooks are an extension of board policy. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank Karen Taylor and Kelly Zerner for the work that they do. They're kind of charged with looking through all the pages of the handbook and working with staff in the building to get feedback on changes and things like that. And then, you know, with our district student handbook now, when we do changes throughout the year, we bring those to the board during those months. So you're improving, you know, forward for the next school year. I was going to highlight, I'm willing to talk about any if you have questions, but I was going to highlight more of the discipline related things in the handbook, because the other ones were kind of just tweaks and changes that we were doing. So on page 8 talked about tardiness. We're just making it uniform, where we had originally from last year, we had period 1 was 5 minutes or less was considered a tardy, or I mean, I'm sorry, 20 minutes or less for period 1. And then the rest of the 2 through 8 were considered 5 minutes, and we're just making them all 20 minutes to make it uniform, which will work for us. And then looking at transportation for the bus conduct, we just expanded kind of the consequences that could occur. So we listed, you know, detention, Saturday detention, in school, out of school, in there directly. And then under our safety personnel, section 6, the school resource officer, we are deleting the last part of it that talks about parent consent is not required for searches. And that also falls under the use of breathalyzers. We're removing the same statement that said parent consent is not required. So we're removing those based on some changes in the law. Obviously, the student handbook, part of the law does state that if we put it in our handbook, then it helps us as we move forward navigating it. But there's also some law, so it's kind of treated on an individual basis for that. And then section 9, which is oh yeah, go ahead.
Looked like Nancy had a question.
I do have a question. First of all, I was kind of shocked that I guess I never really realized that it said parental consent was not required originally, because I always thought
the law changed, so it actually did allow us to do it without having parent consent, but with some of the changes with the law speaking to you know, how school resource officers engage with our students. You know, we're taking out that part.
But does that impact like searching lockers, you know, routine locker searches and things like that? Or does that mean you have to get parental consent each time, or?
Not for lockers. Lockers we can search at any point, but the rules changed last school year with how really our security personnel, our SROs, and any police officers interact with students on campus, and really require us to first contact a parent if any of those personnel are going to be interviewing students or interacting with them.
But didn't we traditionally do that anyway?
Yeah, but it's even more stringent now.
Okay. Okay, so it was our practice. It just wasn't in the, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, my internet went down for a second, but I think Hank answered it perfectly.
Thank you.
Are you guys hearing me okay?
Yep.
Okay. And then going down to section 9 for supporting positive behaviors, we added kind of based on our initiatives to keep improving kind of with the restorative practice for students, the community service piece. Then we looked at Saturday detentions, and we put a statement in there about we can remove a student from the Saturday detention and then provide further consequences as appropriate. And then teacher detentions, we gave a little more flexibility. I think we kind of locked teachers into having to have, when a teacher issues a detention, they're the ones that serve it with the student, and they were referencing like the department, you know, office, so to speak. And so we just gave some flexibility that the teachers can have with giving a detention. And then in the discipline referral, we get many referrals that come in from teachers, and it just gives the deans the ability to put some of those in the file, a student file, and some not. And I'm still going. I seem to be going in and out for you guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then obviously you guys have been involved with the PATH program, approving the positions. So that's our program that will be in our in-school suspension or intervention room, where we're looking to obviously reduce out-of-school suspensions and give interventions. We have a curriculum that we're going to be using called Y-Try. This was actually something that we introduced at the Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee last year when we were over at North, and we gave an introduction to the parents about the Y-Try curriculum and our program, and they gave feedback. And then you guys obviously approved as a board the positions to support that, so we appreciate it. And then the last part was the just adding a reference to the wording so that we can include hemp products in our descriptions under the discipline charts that are on page 43 and 44. So that kind of sums up the other ones. The other ones, like I said, are just kind of tweaking a little bit of the language and things like that, but weren't really student discipline related.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
I noticed that in our agenda, we've got the athletic activities handbook included in our reference materials for the meeting, but I didn't see where there were any changes to the athletic activities handbook.
Yeah, they haven't actually had changes in that for a little bit, so that's just moving forward as is right now. But it'll follow the same process that if there's anything that comes up throughout the year that needs to be changed, we'll bring that to the board at that month to approve. But right now we're using the same one to go forward.
Okay.
I think the only change we've made in the last couple of years was clarifying some of the eligibility pieces. I think we provided some different language, and some of the PE waiver language was updated in the last couple of years. But other than that, it's held pretty true to form.
I got it. The agenda just said that there were revisions and changes to the handbook.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there was no changes to that. And last year when we put it all online in one format rather than, you know, having a district handbook and a district student athletic and activities handbook, there was no changes that they had. We just basically took what they had and just created it into a kind of a one version type of form. So yeah, sorry for the confusion on that.
All right.
All right, so this is up for approval later on this evening under action. Moving on to Gina with the Title I waiver. You're muted, Gina. There you go.
I'm sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute. Okay, so the board may recall from last year, only South High School is a Title I school. And Title I schools, if they have a free reduced lunch percentage below 40%, operate what is called a targeted assistance program, which is what we operated for years. However, we can apply for a waiver that allows us, because as you can see, we are just over 28%, almost 29% of the population at South High receives free or reduced lunch. We can apply for a waiver to be a Title I school-wide program, which is what we run right now, because the board approved it last year. I'm asking the board to approve it again. And what that does is it just gives us a lot of flexibility in how we service students. Greater flexibility in serving all students, not just students that are academically at risk. For example, we can service students in terms of any area related to college and career readiness. We were able to put an AP tutoring program in place this year at South High because we were school-wide. So I'm again asking the board to approve the waiver for South High School to run a school-wide Title I program. I don't know if anyone has any questions about that.
Hearing none. Thanks, Gina.
We put Gina back to back with the Consolidated District Plan. This came to the, this is now coming to the board. This used to be a bunch of different plans that is now one giant plan. And we're bringing it to you in draft form, kind of what Gina's up to with this tonight. And this comes back at the June board meeting for formal approval. So Gina, if you want to provide an overview here.
Sure. The Consolidated District Plan, this is actually our second year. We submitted last year. And as Hank said, this is a very comprehensive plan. It covers basically our title grants, as well as our EL grants and our special education IDEA grant. So Title I, which I just spoke about a minute ago, Title II, which is professional development, Title III, which is for our EL program, our English learners. Also Title III, which is our immigrant education program grant. Title IV, which is a relatively new grant as well. It's only been, I believe this is the third year, if I remember correctly, and then our special education grant. So this large plan encompasses all those grants. The purpose is to streamline it because each grant would ask a series of questions and there was some repetition. So the idea is to streamline it. You answer the question, keeping in mind all of the different students, whether they're EL students, general education students, special education students, students with a 504 plan, so on and so forth. So you answer the questions comprehensively, but you're doing it in one place and you write a plan that applies to all the grants and applies to all the different funding sources. One of the things that is required is a local needs assessment, which we completed virtually. I had two different groups working on that, which was comprised of parents, teachers, staff members, paraprofessionals, and administrators. And obviously we got feedback from various stakeholders, addressing specific questions. And then of course, I will bring the plan to you next month for approval. So just to kind of give you a timeline of what this looks like and why we're still in draft form. I began writing the plan in April. In May, continued writing the plan, conducted the needs assessment that I spoke of, shared different highlights, for example, with the parent-teacher advisory and with various stakeholders, reviewed a lot of feedback from various groups, and now I'm presenting progress to the Board of Education. Moving forward, obviously need to finish the plan. I will present it again to the board. At that point, it will be final and for a vote. And then if approved, we submit it to the State Board of Education. At that point, it goes through 4 levels of review and hopefully will be approved. So our local needs assessment we looked at several different data points. We looked at the 4-year graduation rate. We looked at the English language arts SAT data. We looked at math SAT data. We looked at 9th grade on track, which the board may recall me speaking about before. Essentially, if students are on track at the end of 9th grade, their graduation rate within 4 years is substantially higher. The state looks at 9th grade on track as students who earn a minimum of 5 credits their freshman year and cannot fail more than a semester, so half a credit in a core subject area, math, science, social studies, or English. And then we looked at some attendance truancy data. One of the other data points, which was the first time for this obviously to look at, is we looked at what I call disengagement data, basically students who were not engaging for 3 weeks at that point in remote learning, because as I said a little bit earlier, we certainly want to make sure that we work on interventions to assist those students. So the local needs assessment, where we reviewed all those things, I just tried to give you some very summary statements here. It was determined that there is a need for increased bilingual and English learner support. As we looked at some of those data points, we saw that our ESL population is not meeting standards in many areas. We also looked at student attendance data, and for the 2nd year in a row, and I had several people on this local needs assessment who were not on last year's, which was sort of interesting. For the 2nd year in a row, we see a spike at 12th grade. And so this group this year really honed in on 12th grade. So we need to explore ways to improve student attendance, increasing supports to specific subgroups in many different areas. A lot of our teachers talked about the deep equity professional development that we've been doing for a couple of years now, and hope and really stress that that needs to continue, and appreciate that. Several teachers brought up an advisory, or what we've been calling an access period. Some brought it up when they were looking at the 9th grade on track data and brought it up specifically to 9th grade, but then many brought it up in terms of all students. Increasing support for AP students came out of last year's needs assessment, and then also was mentioned about how we can use our school-wide Title I programming to support all students, embedding SAT strategies in various classes, and then, as I mentioned earlier, about gaps that may exist from remote learning, primarily in courses that build, for example, mathematics or world language. Certainly all courses, but focusing on those. We have many interventions in place, and over the years, the board has heard me talk about a lot of these interventions. So most are probably familiar. I will mention a couple that we have put into place more recently. For example, the seminar class, the board approved that class a few years ago. So that's a recent intervention. Recent intervention is also a math specialist who assists in some of our math classes, working in some cases with the entire class, but more often than not working with small groups or individual students. And then various language supports. This year we put in what's called the language line, and I can tell you that during remote learning, it has been invaluable. I had used it for hours, contacting families to make sure that they had the supports that they needed, and also food, quite frankly. But I wanted to point those out because those are new. We also have a bilingual facilitator, and we looked at that role a little bit differently and had some of our Spanish-speaking homeschool liaison from North assisting at South as well. So the other ones are interventions that the board has heard about, and if you have questions, I certainly will answer those. But I wanted to talk a little bit about our new interventions that have come out of this needs assessment, still a little bit out of last year's need assessment because we weren't able to do all the things that we wanted to do, and then programs that we're putting in place. So last year when I brought the Consolidated District Plan to the board, I talked about AP tutoring and providing advanced placement students with assistance before school, after school, possibly during a lunch period if we had teachers that could do that. And we did get it off the ground and running, and we had quite a few students participate, but as you can see, we began it in February and then went out on remote learning in March. So very short-lived, but we do plan to continue that next year, and actually I had some teachers asking if we were going to, so they were pleased with at least the start of that. We increased bilingual and EL programming As the board already knows, we hired a bilingual EL teacher for South High School for next year to fill that need. Last year, we had planned to hire a role called an interventionist for South High to use Title I funds for that. We had merged that position with a part-time bilingual position, and we were unable to find a candidate to fulfill that need. We are hoping for that to be a little bit greater role this year and to actually hire separate from the bilingual programming. And I can definitely see that interventionist working with students who may have gaps due to remote learning. And then you heard Scott already talk about the PATH program. That PATH program was mentioned several times by teachers during the local needs assessment and how excited they are to have this intervention in place starting next year. So the next steps, I'm continuing to gather and analyze the feedback. Various groups had looked at the data at various times, so some of that data is still coming in. I'm continuing to write and address the questions embedded in the plan. I'm working on finalizing the summary document that I will present to the board with just the highlights of the plan. If I was to print every page of the plan, it would be immense. And then I will review, bring back that final plan to the board in preparation for a vote. And then after the board approves, we will submit the plan to the Illinois State Board of Education. So I don't know if you have any questions or specific questions about the plan or the progress on the plan thus far, I mean.
As you can all see, this is a pretty big job that Gina has each year to pull all this stuff together and put it together. But it's a good review each year of what's working and areas we have for improvement.
Exactly what job does Gina have that isn't a big thing every year?
We only get her the big jobs.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, what exactly is the PATH program?
The PATH program
Yeah.
is that's the program that we brought to the board earlier this year, where we have staff dedicated at both buildings for students that have either in school or in lieu of an out of school suspension would participate in the PATH program.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Now
that's
I
when
remember.
we're staffing with
Yeah.
school personnel, and then we'll provide them with interventions in school, and then we will support them for many weeks after the discipline consequences to make sure that they're not drifting backwards.
Okay. I recall that now.
Yeah.
The name didn't click.
We've got so many acronyms, it's hard to keep track
I
of
was
all.
like, what's PATH? I don't know what it is.
All right. Okay, now we have a series of calendars. The first one is the revision for or an amended calendar for next school year for 2021. And as part of the DGA contract negotiations, we added an additional in-service day at the end of the school year. So that falls now on May 24th. That is the only change that we have made for next year. So we're asking that the board adopts that and approves it later on this evening. So no major change in that. So any questions on that one?
So the change really is that we have 4 emergency days instead of 5. Is that right?
No, you still have 5, but now they start on the 25th and go 5 days. So they go into June now.
Oh, the 31st would be an emergency day?
No, the 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th.
Oh, I see, June 1st. Sorry, I'm
First.
sorry.
Yeah.
There's an E there. Got it. All right. Okay, let's hope we don't have to do that.
Yeah, well, and that all being said, we know right now we're in an unusual time for school calendars. So we have no idea what the future holds for how this actually plays out and works. I've been on several calls, including calls with ISB to discuss, do they foresee any drastic changes like recommended later start times or those kinds of things. They have not made any of those recommendations. So because we don't have any other recommendations from ISB or other organizations saying not to start on our regular start day, we've decided to leave it there. And then moving on, we have the following recommended. It is a very much a mirror of this year's calendar. The only thing that's different, or the only thing that's different from the past, is that additional in-service day we just talked about on May 23rd in 2022. We did have lots of discussions about did we want to come back later than we have in the past? And we looked at some different calendar options, knowing that next summer people might want a longer summer because they're not going to get much of a traditional summer this year. However, with the way that winter break falls in DuPage County and everything else, it became very clear that we would have to majorly rethink how we run the school year to try to change the start date in any way. So at this point, after several meetings and discussing a lot of different options, we're recommending that we kind of roll over that traditional calendar for 21-22. We'll keep an eye on it as the school year goes on. And at this time next year, we'll come back asking for a formal approval of this calendar for the next year.
Hank, I just have one quick question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had any pushback or anything of starting the academic year on that Friday? August, let's see, it says 13th on the 21st, 22nd, and then having a weekend?
No, our families actually have responded well to that 13th day. Students and families come in, it's kind of an orientation day. They get the lists of all the supplies they might need. They go through their schedule, and then they get to have one more weekend of summer. And then we're back running on the Monday. I was concerned about that when I first got here and asked a lot of questions about that, just kind of that Friday hanging out there.
Yeah.
But it's actually more appreciated than not.
Okay. And is it a full day or is it half day?
It's a partial day.
Partial day. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So we bring the freshmen in separate from the rest of the classes that day and do a modified schedule. So the freshmen get some time to find their way through the building and work with the student leaders and get a feel for what's going to happen. And then the rest of the students come through. Well, actually, it's the other way. I think the freshmen come in the afternoon.
Yeah, because then they have South has Mad Dash and North has a similar type program for the freshmen. So, okay, I just asking.
Yep, we had lots of conversations about it, but we're recommending right now we just stay the course.
Okay, all right. Sounds good.
All right, so that's up for approval this evening as well. And then Julie has spent a lot of time thinking about our board meetings and where they should fall. So she's been working on a board meeting calendar for the next year. It follows our traditional first Monday board workshops, third Monday board meetings, and then there's adjustments made for holidays and breaks and those kinds of things throughout the year. So thank you to Julie for putting in all the work to pull that all together.
Thanks, Julie.
All right. And that's it for calendars. I'm going to turn it over to Mark Jim to talk about electric and gas contract renewals.
So every 3 years or so, or a few years, we do multi-year contracts for utilities. Largest of the two is electricity. Much larger, and our gas is smaller, but still a substantial cost to the district. And it's a good thing that I think, did it now. The market has been really positive in terms of going to it. It was so good on the gas side, we decided that it was worth terminating our contract. If I got that right, let me make sure I didn't flip that around.
You got it right, Mark.
Yeah. No, and electricity was so good. The electricity was going to go one more year, and we cut that off, and started a new 3-year agreement. And there's a penalty for doing that because they already have arranged the natural gas in the line. So we had a penalty there, but we still are saving money by making the changes here. And then the following 2 years, we'll have about $98,000 to $100,000 of savings on those 2 years. So we wanted to lock in the current low rates, even having to pay a contract amount higher in this first year just to switch the contract out. But the electricity, the process was really, I think, well done this year. Jim and Kristen as assistant, they worked with our broker on this, and they had first just a closed sealed meeting, not meeting, but a bid, and then followed it up with a live auction. And the preliminary bid that was sealed was just to make sure that everybody had the same terms, because there's a lot of little pieces to these electric contracts in terms of the delivery and hidden fees inside those contracts. So we made sure everybody was on the same page with the sealed bid submission, and then allowed them go to a live online auction, and got the price down even a little bit further by doing that about a week later. So both processes were very good, and it now puts us in a good position for the next 3 years, especially when we go through a period where we have opening the new buildings with a lot more space in them. It'll be good to have a lower rate going into that. So there's no action on this. This is informational. There's no legal requirement to have to bid this out. It's just something we did to make sure we got the bottom of the price points.
Mark, you buried the lead.
Oh, I what?
You buried the lead.
The most important part of it.
Oh yeah, I know. Oh yeah, the biggest thing which was board goal and district goal is to go green. And the electric contract, you can't do it with gasoline, but with electric, we're going to be 100% green. It's built into the contract. So we're happy to be able to do that. That's right. I was told to prompt that, and I just flew right past it. So, apologize. But it is. It's a great thing to do, and we're happy to have been able to work it into this contract.
So Mark and Jim did a great job of making sure that electric for us moving forward is 100% green energy. So I know that that's been a discussion with the board and the community for a while, and we're happy to be able to make that change, and in doing so also saving the district money. So it's a win all the way around.
So how do we actually do that? Is that offsetting the costs, or where you
No, it is actually a little bit of a additional cost related to that. It's but we're getting it generated from I think it's all Illinois too, wind farms and
okay.
electric producers in Illinois. It's actually the best way to go green in Illinois, because putting up solar panels and things like that, there's a lot of different costs that get involved with that. You're putting it on your roof. If there's a problem with the roof, you've got to, move that stuff. And it's and actually it doesn't pay for itself at all to do that. There's very few states where energy costs are so high that the solar just hasn't caught up with the cheapness of nuclear and some of these other production sources. But we're going all green, and so we go to green vendors in the state. The broker lines it up for us.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right. Any other questions on energy? All right. Move on to technology.
So
let Mark do this as well.
Thanks, Hank. The lease we're doing is kind of what we've done for the last few years. We have a new set of Chromebooks that we give a freshman year. We're finding that they are lasting. Hopeful that all of them will continue to be as strong and rugged, but they're lasting 4 years. And so we may get to the point where we just let the kids keep them, but we haven't made that change yet. With something we'll probably look at it one more year and see how they're going to get a lot of use this next year, and even at the end of this last year. We'll see how well that goes. But we have a very a competitive price on this, so we are going to use a lease. It's really just to save us on the budgeting side. We paid over 4 years. It's a very low rate of interest, reasonable rate of interest. And we also built into the same lease authority to go higher up to $815,000 because we are pushing to get all of the internet support updated when we open the new schools. The new, MFP is complete. And now as the buildings are open up, and Jim has worked very hard, especially in the last couple of weeks, to try and coordinate some of these things into the next couple summers, this summer in particular. But then we might even be able to do it out of the budget. So I'm going to take a look at that and see if we can't build this into the budget, just pay for that part of it and not even touch the other excess money over the $420,000 we need for the Chromebooks. But it just gives us the authority to kind of have a line of credit already built in so we can send it off to a vendor right away if we want to do some replace the UPS devices, which has become a concern for Rod, and a few other things in the system. So we have capacity to do it with this lease. We did this before when we upgraded the internet, so we kind of just followed the same path for that. I'm sorry.
Questions for Mark? All right.
So there will be an action.
That is an action item this evening, yes. All right. Next one is master facility plan progress. We're going to start with the overall budget report. Board has been seeing this every month for a while now. The number we always point to and look at is contingency. So that contingency number estimated at completion right now is at 5.434 million. So that includes all of the alternates that the board approved at the last board meeting, all of the allowances that are in here from the last round of bids. And it does include the one project that's up for board action to vote on tonight, which is the windows at South. So that shows you that if all of the alternates were improved, that's all of the alternates in the worst case scenario. So that doesn't factor in, the work that we're going to do to try to drop the cost of the alternates in the auditorium work at South that we discussed last month. So that's kind of the worst case scenario number right now. The number that continues to go up is that owner budget costs. That's almost entirely due to increased asbestos removal. It's a good thing we're getting it out of the building. It's a bad thing it costs money. So, but that's ongoing work that happens with that. We are way ahead of schedule in a lot of ways because the buildings have been closed. So at South High, we have the auditorium, I think, is almost entirely demolished, and they're getting ready to start working on footings for the new auditorium. The courtyard has all of the footings in it for the new learning commons, and the interior of the South High STEAM addition is cruising along, so things are going really well there. Over at North High, bleachers are almost back on track here and getting ready to put those into place, the home bleachers and the squad rooms underneath. The new athletic addition is getting really close. It's looking great, moving along. And we have started to put footings in around the southeast corner of the building and have almost completed, Jim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're pretty close to the demolition work inside of that southeast corner of the building as well, which will become North's STEAM addition. So making a lot of progress here, moving pretty quickly. Rod, if you go to the next slide, or the next thing there. Yeah, this is the other thing we've been looking at each month, which is, again, the total value. We're within that GMAX guaranteed contract. The contingency is there for you again. FF&E, We're really starting to buy furniture now because that phase 2 had a whole bunch of furniture in it. And then phase 3, which is the commons, will have another bundle of furniture in it. Really, phase 2 has a lot of equipment in it. That's outfitting the STEAM areas at both buildings. So you have some science labs, you have fine arts labs, engineering labs. There's a lot of equipment that's in phase 2 that's reflected in that budget that's starting to be spent down there. And then the remaining contractor allowances, you can see phase A is close to being wrapped up. Remember that last amount there is due to some fire alarm and sprinkler work that's going on throughout the entire project. Phase B, we're starting to get those allowances back as we're starting to close out phase B. And by the end of the summer, we should get some of that money back. Phase C is all of the first level of contingency in those allowances. Those bids are just being closed up. So that number has grown as we've awarded bids, but then hopefully we don't spend all of that, and that adds to contingency in the future as well. We are sitting at about 99% of all of the bidding complete at this point. A little bit of casework on both sides of town and a few other assorted items. So that's where we're sitting with the budget right now. Any questions on this or the work? I'd encourage the public to continue to look at those facility Fridays. We've started to include in those the bi-weekly white progress report. So that's the update from the architect and contractor or the builder. And in there are some great images, 360 views of the project and the work and the spaces. It's a really great way to kind of immerse yourself in the project and see how much ground they're making up right now. It's pretty impressive. All right, so hearing no other questions. Returning from last month, I provided some additional information to the board. This was the one alternate that was pulled out, which is replacing the existing windows in the STEAM Commons area at South High. What you can see there in that image is the frames. We don't have the glass yet, so I know it's tough to ask the board to make a call at this point with kind of half of what it looks like. But that's the frames that'll go into the new windows. Rod, if you'll scroll down, it's kind of going to have that full glass appearance, like what you see in the left-hand side of that image. That's an interior window. Remember, these windows were exterior windows and are becoming interior windows. So it's kind of a look and feel to this space. The change here, as I said last month, is an aesthetic change that we're asking for. If you scroll down again, Ron, you can see there's a longer view of the windows that are being replaced back into that alley at South High. That's above the new culinary arts lab, and it's heading back towards the field house. Rod, if you continue scrolling down. This gives you an image of the two sides as you're heading across the bridge, heading back into the second floor at South High. You're standing right now on the second floor balcony of the STEAM Commons, looking back at the original building. On the right are the new window frames. On the left are the older window frames. So this is one of the locations where you'd really notice that there's a difference between the old and the new. If you scroll down again, Rod, that's what the old window frames look like. So what we're proposing here is to replace those frames with the newer frames for the whole entire wing. So that's that whole stretch that you see there. So that's heading back east. The windows that were in the older part of the building that weren't in the area that we had to update. And then I think, Rod, can you see if there's anything more? I think that's the end. Really, we asked the acousticians, that's a word I've learned through this project, if there was any significant difference in the sound quality of protection between the old windows and the new windows. There really isn't. It is really in the look. The cost for this change in the project is $183,000. Of that $183,000, there's a portion of it, somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000, that we're going to spend either way, because we're going to have to put some kind of film on the first floor windows, and we're going to have to change some window coverings, because now that used to look out to the outside. Now it looks into the inside, if that makes any sense, because it's looking out into the commons. So we're still going to have to do some things to the windows. So you're probably looking at somewhere around $143,000 in new costs in comparison, but the total cost of the project is expected to be $183,000 at the most. So later on tonight is an action item. It's just there for the board to take a vote. What I'm asking for, the recommendation out of the court committee was to do that this summer. If we don't do it this summer, then we're probably putting it off till next summer, or not at all. So we'll probably come, if we don't approve it tonight to be done this summer, we'll continue to look at it. We'll see what it looks like once it's all done. We'll continue to look at the budget, and then we'll go back to the core team to see if they recommend bringing it back in the future to the board. So at this point, I'll take any questions. I might have Jim help if I have something I can't answer.
I'd like to say, Hank, going back to that bridge picture, I don't know if we can bring that back up, but where you can
Ross,
see.
can you pull that up?
In the new? Yeah, so scroll down a little bit.
Maybe about the third.
Right there, that's the one. So, aesthetically here, when you look at this, you're going to know right away something changed. And so there's a break in the continuity. At North, we're not experiencing anything like this, and we didn't take any of these windows out of we have a commons area at North. We have existing windows that are looking out into that space, and we didn't take those things out of the budget at North. And so, I even think that there's a little bit of an equity issue here at play, where, if we don't go ahead with this, we're taking something away from the effect that we didn't take away at North. And in fact, this was part of the original scheme. I think the windows visually are going to make a big difference. The windows that are there existing are like 45 years old. At some point, everything has a life expectancy. So we can expect to have to be doing something more to those windows over time. And putting in new windows would avoid those future costs. And I know that the acoustician is saying that there's a minimal difference, and I agree with that. However, there will be a difference. The new windows will seal up better. The new windows will not have an operable feature to them that has to be, closed up and sealed up. These will come as a fixed product, whereas existing windows right now, those bottom windows are operable hopper awning windows, I believe. Is that right, Jim?
Yeah, they're push out. You flip them over and push them.
Right. So, so there will be an improvement. I think to be fair, there's not a sufficient improvement to make that a reason to do this, right? But it is a fringe benefit to doing it. There will be an improvement over what's there, just not significant. But I'm very much in favor of this, and Hank, I think we're looking at, so the hit on the contingency is probably 140 something thousand, not the 183. When we look at the net effect, right?
Yeah. There's going to have to be improvements made to those windows one way or another. Like you said, we've got to seal them. We've got to screw those opening ones shut.
Right.
And all those. And then Ed, I'm going to ask you to hop on here and just comment about somewhat of the difference of the look that you were mentioning.
Yeah, I just want to clarify the windows on the right.
You got to speak up, Ed. Can barely hear you.
All right, let me try this. Okay, how's that?
That's better.
Better.
The new windows do have metal window frames that divide it into three. It's not one giant piece of glass. So I just want to clarify that. But it's just those three large pieces. It's not divided into 9 pieces like the existing windows. The other thing, you saw the shading of the Mustang on the window. And if you've been in the main offices at South now, we have the gradient that shades out the direct look into. That's what Hank was alluding to. All of those first floor classrooms, we would have the frosting coming up from the bottom about halfway, so that when kids are walking in the hall right outside those first floor windows, which used to look outside, will now be looking into the hall. So that's some of that added cost that has to be done anyhow. And if we do that now and then come back and do the windows later, that's money down the drain. So just wanted to provide some clarity to that and the difference in how they'll look.
I'd like to see the continuity, just, because it's all going to read together. You're coming from the Commons into the Steam Edition, and all these windows all really ought to be the same. And it's like I get editions I do for, we do a lot of edition work with our work, get clients, wanting to switch to a different material or something. And there are ways that we could do it to make it, palatable. And, but ideally, it's a money thing, right? And so if you don't have the money to do it, then you don't. But
I'm kind of with Mike. I'm not an architect, but I just see that we've invested so much money in this. It's like taking Michelangelo and tell him to leave the head off. I just kind of would like to see it completed and look the way it's supposed to look. We've invested so much money in this.
If I can add one more thing, this is older space that now looks into the new space. The Learning Commons in the center of the building, all of the windows that used to look outside in that space that are now going to be looking inside are getting replaced. These are the only windows that were outside windows and are now inside windows that are not being replaced.
Yeah, so to Ed's point, if you start in the large Learning Commons and you follow that curve all the way through, out in the courtyard, all those windows will look like the new windows on the right. And then you'll follow new windows all the way until you hit this bridge, and then it will be the old windows. So it'll be like the tail end of the Commons you'll hit, and it'll have this older look to it.
Yeah, this is something that, quite honestly, in retrospect, I wasn't aware that this had been taken out, and I never would have recommended that it be taken out. And I understand why it was, but I'm putting my architect's hat on here. This is something that, I really don't think that it's something we really should have been even having a discussion about at this point. I understand why it's happened, and I get it, but this is one of those, it's almost like us debating brick colors, this should have been part of it. It's part of the design. And we're fortunate to have enough money in the contingency to be able to put it back in. And I think that that's the right thing to do. So I'm hoping I get a few people to agree with me.
Is there something we would, if we didn't do this, is there something else we would use that money for?
Well, right now the contingency is just there to, obviously for the second 2 phases, or the last 2 phases, to make sure that we have anything there in case we run into anything concerning. In phase 2, I asked about how that was going, and with the footings all starting to be poured, the auditorium being removed at South and the footing starting to be poured there, our biggest concerns for the builders have been, we made it past those kind of milestones. I'm not saying that they won't run into something else that eats into the contingency this summer, but they said that the scariest things were past. And then we have next summer worth of building, which they'd like first to hold $1 million aside for that. So if you look at that, you're just around 3.4 million. And with that amount of money, we believe we can finish out the rest of the classroom and hallway improvements that we have slated in our wish list. And that would spend out the remainder of the contingency at the end of this project. Right now, we're working with White to get estimates to make sure that that dollar amount would be sufficient, but we believe it will be.
So we're not preventing some other, like, something else that is on the wish. I will still get our wish list.
Yeah, everything that's been on the wish list so far is in that contingency. It's that 5.4 million includes every wish on the wish list that we have brought to the board to approve, including this. You know.
And we have a potential additional cushion in the allowance money
Correct.
that we're going to be getting back.
Yeah, you've got quite a bit right now in those allowances is our first level of contingency. Should anything come up, the actual contingency is something that was unforeseen and totally unexpected.
My thing is I think that we need to make the continuity look at the way it is. You know, I want to change it to those windows. The only thing is if we don't and we decide to do it later, it's going to cost us probably twice as much.
I don't know about twice as much, Terry, but there will be an inflated cost because you're going to have to do the window treatments and tinting this summer one way or another so that space is good for instruction when kids return. There's also a slight increase in the cost of installation because right now we don't have to protect porcelain ceramic floor. And if we do it next summer, we'll have to put some floor protection down. I mean, it's not a huge cost, right? But it is a cost.
Right. So we might as well do it now. I mean, it just makes more sense to me. So that's my feeling.
I'm sorry, I have a question. I need to understand. Is this, because I stepped away just for a second, are we debating this because we talked about putting the windows in before and we decided? I'm a bit confused about
So
this.
yeah, I'll go back to the history of the Sherelle. At the beginning, when we were working on estimates based on square footage of spaces, the cost of some of the bigger projects at South were estimated to be higher than they actually came in at. So to come in within budget, we removed a few things from it. And this was one of the things that we removed at the beginning when we were putting the original budget together. So it was part of the original design. It was removed as part of the early budgeting process to make sure that we were within budget. Now that we're within budget, we'd like to add this back in. We brought it last month as a discussion as part of the alternates. There were some concerns amongst board members, and we've always said that if there was ever an alternate that there was kind of the board was split on, we would put it as an action item at the following board meeting. So this is the first one where the board was kind of split on an alternate. So it's up for discussion here. We're just explaining it a little bit more than we did last month. And then later on in the meeting, it's here as an action item to do it this summer. If it doesn't get approved, then we'll send it back to the core team to reconsider if we do it at a later date.
And the picture that you're showing as is showing that that's the way it's currently left right now. And
that's the way it would look. Obviously, there'd be glass on the right side. There'll be 3 glass panes in each one of those windows. And then after on the other side of the bridge to the left are the original windows that would be left there if we didn't do this alternate with that kind of big pane with the little pane underneath it. So as Ed said, the 6 pane look in each of those rather than the 3 pane look. And also you'll have the large aluminum frames. The frames are not as pronounced on the left side of the bridge or on the right side of the bridge in the new area.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure I was up to speed. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. All right, any other questions on those? All right, thank you for your consideration and taking time to understand the request. As I said, it is recommended by the administration and the core planning team. All right, FOIA requests, we have them and we have fulfilled them. They are listed on our website.
Okay,
All right, that's it for the superintendent's reports.
okay, we're ready to vote on the consent agenda. Is there any item any member of the board would like to take out of the consent agenda before we vote?
Before you go to a vote, I need to draw attention that once again tonight we have a revised board report from when we first submitted it because we've got some more hires that we added on. Milana Vasilik, the social studies teacher that'll be split between North and South, was added on after this was posted on Thursday.
Can I just take a moment and say, you have just been such a pleasure to work with. I'm so sorry to see you retiring, but I just wish you all the best.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy.
I've learned so much from you. Thank you.
Here, here.
Yes, yes, Pete.
Yeah.
We will
You- you
miss
s-
you greatly.
Well, you're still stuck with me for at least another month, so.
One more month.
I know,
Yeah.
but still.
Yeah, but we won't, you know, I don't know how we're going to be meeting in the future, but we miss being together to wish him in.
And unfortunately, we can't even have cake for you. Until this pandemic.
Well, someday we'll have Pete back for cake.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you have to promise to come
Promise?
back.
That's
Okay.
right.
I promise to be back. I also promise I won't be at a board meeting.
That's fair. That's
It'll have to be
fair.
cake some other time.
Hey, we'll do something for you and it won't be cake. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll make it.
Anything else before we take a vote on the consent agenda?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as read.
Except we haven't read it yet, Terry. So the motion for the Board of Ed to approve the consent agenda is presented, which includes A, personnel report, appointment certified, compensation, B, personnel report, retirement certified, resignations classified, C, financial pages, D, approval of district auditor services, E, approval of district depositories, and F, approval of South High School school-wide Title I waiver. Now, Terry, you can motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
And Mike seconds.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller,
Aye.
Dan Nicholas,
Aye.
Rick Pavanato,
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler,
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye, the consent agenda passes. Now we move on to the recommendations for actions, and the first is the approval of the 2020. We need a motion for the Board of Education to approve the 2020-2021 Student Parent Handbook, which contains the Student Discipline Code and the Athletic Activities Handbook.
So moved.
Second.
Joanna? Is that
Yeah.
you? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler,
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller,
Aye.
Dan Nicholas,
Aye.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Rick Pavanato,
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye, the motion carries. The next is the approval of the Board of Education negotiating team member stipends. There is a motion for the Board of Education to approve a stipend of $1,750 for members of the board negotiating team and $2,500 for the chief negotiator as presented.
I'll move.
Second.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Dan.
Not sure, me or Dan.
It was Mike and Dan.
Oh, Mike and Dan.
Thank you very much. Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Dan Nicholas,
Aye.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Rick Pavanato,
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler,
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller,
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
No, but the motion carries. Next, we need a motion for the Board of Education to approve the 2020-2021 amended school calendar as presented.
So
So
moved.
moved. Oh,
Meet ya.
Mike
Sorry,
moved,
Mike.
Terry seconded.
So Terry was first. I'm sorry,
No,
Terry.
Mike was first, Terry was second.
Thank you. Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Rick Pavanato,
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler,
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller,
Aye.
Dan Nicholas,
Aye.
and Nancy Kupka.
Aye, the motion carries. Next is the motion for the Board of Education to approve the 2021-2022 school calendar as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Can I, discussion?
Sure.
Yeah, I thought that this was going to come back to us next year. I misunderstood.
This is the approval of the draft calendar. So it's
Okay.
in draft form for a year and then it comes back for
Got it.
approval, just like we approved next year's just now.
Understood. It
Yep.
wasn't the wording. Never mind.
It's confusing.
Sorry.
I
Thank
know,
you.
I
No, it's
totally-
always confusing at this time of the year.
Yep.
And usually we're approving the prior years at this point, but we're not because of what's going on with
That's
the
right.
current
Yep.
situation with
It's-
calendars.
It's all, okay.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler,
Aye.
Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller,
Aye.
Dan Nicholas,
Aye.
Rick Pavanato,
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye, the motion carries. Now we need a motion for the Board of Education to approve the 2021 Board of Education meeting calendar as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Mike and Terry, was it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, get a little quicker. Real quicker.
Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Rick Pavanato,
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler,
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller,
Aye.
Dan Nicholas,
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye, the motion carries. Next, we need a motion for the Board of Education to approve the master facility plan alternate, replacing the existing windows in the STEAM common area South High.
So moved.
Second.
Mike and Joanna.
Thank you. Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler,
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller,
Aye.
Dan Nicholas,
No.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Rick Pavanato,
Aye.
and Nancy Kupka.
Aye, motion carries. Next is the approval of the technology lease, and that is the motion for the Board of Education to approve the 4-year lease with Wintrust Bank at an interest rate of 3.0% up to a maximum lease amount of $815,000 and authorize the administration to execute all documents necessary to secure the lease.
So moved.
moved. I'll be second. Joanna gets first.
Okay.
Thank you. Joanna Vasquez Drexler,
Aye.
Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller,
Aye.
Dan Nicholas,
Aye.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Rick Pavanato,
Aye.
and Nancy Kupka.
Aye, the motion carries. We're moving on to the second reception of visitors for public comment. Hank, anything?
On the form right now, we have received no additional public.
I
couldn't hear that.
Sorry, we've received no additional public comments.
No additional comments.
Hank's stuck in Hank's video stuck too. It looked really cute.
Report on the Legislative Education Network of DuPage. Dan or Hank?
I wasn't able to attend the meeting on Friday, but I was at the meeting 2 Fridays ago, or maybe it was 3 Fridays ago now, it's all blending together. The one 3 Fridays ago, there's a lot more questions and answers that were raised about what's going to happen with the upcoming school year. I don't remember the individual's name, but we had a state representative on that call. And again, lots of great questions were asked by everybody, and not a lot of answers were provided. Hank, I don't know if any answers were provided yesterday. I looked through the materials they sent out, but we're in the same situation we've been in for months. So a lot more questions than answers today.
Yeah, we continue with a lot more questions than answers. Peg did report from Len that it's really the governor's show right now, that the legislature is working from the sidelines and is looking for ways to become more involved in the decision-making process, but is waiting for the appropriate time to do so. You could expect they're returning this week, and we'll have a very expedited session to approve several bills. One of them you could expect would be the budget in whatever shape that's going to take moving forward. In other Lend news, we did approve, if you remember a couple of years ago, Peg moved to her own company, and then Lend hires Ethicos is the name of the company as consultants. And that's how the arrangement is with Peg working forward. We extended her deal with through Ethicos for another 2 years. So Peg will be around for a little bit. Otherwise, we're meeting pretty regularly. I think we have another meeting coming up, but we see every Monday and Friday I am in meetings. Monday it's with all DuPage superintendents, and Peg is in those meetings and provides us updates. And every Friday it is the DuPage County, it's the superintendents in DuPage County that have high schools. So that's all the unit districts and the high school districts meet every Friday to discuss what's going on, you know, in these current times. And then we begin working again this week, and then next Monday on Memorial Day, we'll be working all day with the superintendents, working to come up with plans for whatever comes next. So hopefully somewhere between now and then we get some updated guidance from ISB. That's been rather slow to arrive and is frustrating a great number of us right now.
Did I hear you say you have to have this meeting on Monday, on Memorial Day?
Yeah, we just need time to work. That we've been working weekends and nights since this began, Mike. So this is par for the course. But it's the only way we can carve out time and work on what comes next and still get the jobs done that we have during the regular day. So like a lot of folks, we're on call for whatever we need to be right now.
Wow, and thank you.
Absolutely. The School Association for Special Education in DuPage County. Joanna, do you have anything to report?
I don't, because I did not attend their meeting. They switched it to Thursday, and I just opened the notes today and haven't gone through it, but I will have something for next time.
Terry, District 99 Education Foundation.
Yes, we approved 3 more grants. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm here for you, Terry.
Thanks. That look very exciting for both North and South High, and we'll be bringing those next month for you to approve, and then we'll be passing out some money because some of it will be used right in the summertime to prepare for the fall. So those are pretty exciting with PE and special ed and some STEM work. So, you know, it's just really exciting to see. And we're going to also be working on sending out an appeals letter for the fall and get ready for that. And, you know, I think that's about it, isn't it? Hey,
is the foundation still raising money for?
Oh yes, we have we have a couple of pass-throughs. I believe that the Shield one is not taking any money right now. I think that they've
not until we expend the fund that's there. Yeah, that has brought in about $15,000.
Right.
I think at this point we have made and distributed 7,000 face masks. They cost about $1 a piece to make, but then there's upkeep of the machines and maintenance and those kinds of things. If we reach a point where we need more money to keep meeting needs, then we'll reopen that campaign up. That we raised $15,000 for that in what, like 4 days? I mean,
it was a very short window for it to be open.
And
So-
we're over $11,000 right now in the COVID relief fund for families there. And in that, our administration is identifying families in need. And then the foundation is purchasing gift cards for places like Jewel, Aldi, Targets, some restaurants in the area and those kinds of things. And then the administration is distributing those cards to families in need.
How much did you say was in that one?
I think we're almost at
About
12,000 now.
Wasn't it about 12,000?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to share that my little guy, he did a fundraiser in the neighborhood where he made bracelets so that he can donate to that fund.
Nice.
Oh, thank you so much, Sherelle.
As well as mine, so.
Tell them we all said thank you.
Yeah.
That was really a great, and it's a great opportunity because the families are getting gift cards rather than just cash to spend at local restaurants, which are helping them too, and to the Jewel and Target. We're finding that they're good about is selling us a batch at a time, a large one, so that they can do $25 and $50 increments.
Okay.
That's wonderful.
And then the principals are the ones that are requesting those funds and passing them out, if I remember correctly. So, and that one I believe is still open for donations.
Yes.
So, you know, if anyone feels like they would like to donate to that, go to our website and there is a link to donate to that fund.
Yeah, pretty easy to do.
Yes. Yeah. Very easy. Very easy. And
the foundation has been amazing through all of this. You know, you look at the face shields and a lot of the 3D printers we're using there were seed projects from the foundation themselves.
Right.
You know, they bought they helped us fund those projects to begin with. They've now come full circle this way. And then we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the social fund, that although we didn't have many social events at the end of the year that we would have been funding with that, the foundation's raised over $10,000 for students in need that can't afford to pay for things like prom or dances or camps or those kinds of things, where we'll be able to, once we get those things back up and running, we'll be able to help folks afford those things as well.
And those you can donate to at registration. You know, that's just a link on your registration form for the Angel Fund. And I would imagine that the Covert Fund is going to be on there too. And then strictly to the foundation so that we can give grants to our teachers, and that'll all be on registration area.
However, we are going to make a little change to registration. We finalized that today and started announcing it, that we're going to actually issue the fees statements at the beginning of September. So rather than July, we have a lot of movement that happens with fees at the start of the year, with people changing classes and those kinds of things. So over the years, we have to do a bunch of refunds and then rebill people for things. So we're going to wait until everybody's settled into their classes to put out fee statements, and they're not going to be due until October. When we give that a shot this year, we also know this is a time where people might be a little bit strapped. So we think that waiting a little bit, we're going to see how it goes this year and see if it cuts down on our amount of work to start the year, and if it gives families a little bit of a break to go into October until they need to start paying any fees. And a reminder, we do allow people to go onto payment plans and to pay that over the course of the year in whatever amount that they can do it. So a little slight tweak in the change there for this year.
Well, anything that we can help some of our families, because this time has really been a strain on them for a lot of things. And boy, I give a lot of our families a lot of credit for doing above and beyond. Not only the first responders, but but also just our families in general.
Yep.
I mean, who would have thought they had to be teachers? I mean, really, it's just incredible to me. So thank you, parents and families.
Absolutely. And thank you, Foundation. And finally, Mike, do you have anything from IASB?
I do not.
Okay. With that, we do have we have an upcoming board meeting on June 1st. We'll have the workshop meeting at 6:30 p.m., probably still remotely. And on June 15th, we'll have a business meeting at 6:30 p.m.
Yeah, and you'll notice that it's not just a workshop on the 1st. We're gonna have we want to just at this time of the year get people that we're hiring approved. So we'll have a personnel report for approval that night.
Okay.
Mark is also going to come back with some bond things that evening. So we don't have many agenda items that night, but just to get all of those processes rolling, we'll probably have a shorter meeting on June 1st and then a more traditional business meeting on the 15th, which is when we'll say farewell and good luck to Pete.
Hopefully in person.
I just have one other thing. I don't know if Hank wants to jump in on this a little bit, but remember our graduating seniors, we're honoring them on Friday at 8:20, right, Hank?
Correct. Yeah, I have it right here. I was going to get to that one, but I'm glad you got there, Terry.
Oh, I'm sorry,
No,
Hank.
that's all
I
right.
didn't mean to steal your thunder, but
No,
I
you
just
can have the thunder all you want. It's not about me. It's about our kids.
Yes, absolutely. I just didn't want us to forget about them because, you know, this
What are we
senior
doing at
year.
8:20 on Friday?
So Friday at 8:20, the communities of Downers Grove, Woodridge, Lyle, and Darien, I think I got everybody there, have all passed resolutions to recognize the class of 2020 on Friday at 8:20 p.m. So that's 2020 in 24-hour time, where for 20 seconds, they'd like everybody to go out and make some noise for our graduates. So go out and bang a pot and pan or sing a song or honk a horn or just scream because you're tired of looking at all four walls of your house. But in honor of our graduates on Friday. That's the night graduation would have been occurring had we not been in the situation that we're in now.
In your neighborhood, wherever you are, like we're not gonna come and ride around the school or something?
No, no parading. Downers Grove would prefer that people don't parade right now. So, yep, just make noise at your own house, out in your front yard.
Now, is there going to be anything else for our seniors?
Yeah, well, we're working on what'll actually happen with graduation and those kinds of things. We have to get whatever plan we're working through approved by the DuPage County Health Department. So we're looking at what options are out there right now. We're looking at their guidance, and then we expect in the next week or so to have things announced. Right now, our staff is really working on, last week was getting everything to our seniors and that kind of distribution. This week, they're working on all the plans to get everything back to grades 9 through 11 and to close out this school year with grades and everything else. And then as this week goes on, we'll really start focusing on graduation. Whatever happens, we have it slated to happen on the nights that we rescheduled for. So whatever virtual thing that happens will be released on those nights that we rescheduled for.
Well, the signs were really nice. I saw them in some neighbors' yards, and it was really a nice touch to have that done. And then it was also nice to see that young lady from South High in, was it, I don't remember if it was
People
People
magazine.
USA Today.
People.
Yeah. I mean, what a nice ending to a interesting year.
If you have a chance to hop on Twitter and look at any of the feeds from the last week, you'll see, starting about 2 weeks ago, our administrative team and volunteers out distributing signs in students' graduates' lawns. And then last week was really focused on the end of the year awards. So teams and departments showing up at kids' houses that were getting the department awards and the year-end awards, and celebrating each of them virtually a great deal on Twitter. It was great to see all of those pictures and that going on. I know Ed and Janice really enjoyed the opportunity and their teams to get out and see some kids from some safe social distance and celebrate kids, which is really what this time of the year is always about, and has really been lacking for us because we haven't been able to be around them. So it was fun to follow that virtually, and it was a great way to celebrate our kids over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. And thank you to our staff for doing all of that for them, because they put in a lot of extra work with all of this, and we can't say thank you enough. So
Thank you, everyone.
thanks.
Thank you so much. And if you really want to thank everybody, make a contribution to the COVID-19 fund through the fund.
There you go.
Yes.
So do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sherelle.
So moved.
Motions. Carrie seconds. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Be
We're
safe.
adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, board members. Thank you for your service and in these unusual times.
Have a good Memorial Day, everybody. Take
Yeah.
care.
Stay
Wear
safe
your
and
mask.
distance. Take care.
Hank, I have a question for you
Yeah, sure, Rick.
when we're offline.